Invisibility. We're a global network of campuses all across the states, and whether that's New York, SF, Boston, or LA. Our mission is to empower people to pursue the work that they love through education. We offer creative classes in tech, design, and business. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask any one of us. And I just want to thank you again for being here today.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for hosting us tonight. My name is Pashul Christensen. I'm the Marketing and Partnerships Manager for The Hive. We have a very interesting presentation tonight, so I won't take too much of your time. I'm just going to say a few words about The Hive and The Hive Think Tank. So The Hive Think Tank is a community of data scientists, practitioners, engineers, designers, artists, all focused on big data. We host events every week, mostly in the South Bay. We had about 60 events in 18 months. We hosted more than 150 speakers, and we have over 5,000 members. So it's one of the largest data-driven community in the world, I think. And these are our upcoming events. Next one is in San Francisco again. We're going to talk about connected home. It's a very timely discussion. And then we're going to have a much more technical discussion that we're going to host in the South Bay around new development in scalable machine learning. We'd like to thank our sponsors and our partner General Assembly for hosting us tonight. And a few words about The Hive. The Hive is a early-stage data-driven startup incubator. We found, launch, and incubate data-driven entrepreneurs and businesses. So if you have any ideas of applications for businesses you would like to start, please come and reach out to me. And this is a little bit more about our business model. And we are hiring, of course, like every companies in the Silicon Valley. We are hiring engineers and software engineers and developers. So tonight, if you want to tweet and continue the discussion online, please use the hashtag HiveData. And I'll leave the microphone to Stephanie or Marek. Thank you so much for being here. They've been traveling all the way from Europe to introduce you their book and their organization. So please make sure to take a look at the book after the discussion, and I think you'll be the best person to introduce yourselves. So I'll leave the microphone to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for invitation. How is everybody? Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes.
On the front row, yes. What about the back row? Can you hear me? Yeah, bit louder? Yeah, that's better? Cool. My name is Marek. This is Stephanie. We are from Practical Tech, and thank you for the invitation. We are Europeans, which is a very funny actually thing, because that doesn't happen in Europe. They don't call you Europeans in Europe. When you arrive here, I realize I'm European. I'm Polish, so I'm testing now the accent. How are you doing? Can you actually... It's not funny yet. It's gonna get at some point. So we are here to talk about... right. Ta-da. First of all, there's going to be talk, there's a book, and we made a series of films that are an outcome of the book and many talks. So I'm going to show you like a little bit of that. What you're going to experience today is, I don't think it's going to be 27 minutes, probably 36 minutes, and because I increased the number of slides massively just before starting. Because I've been told that this group is quite unusual. I've been told that you're coming from mostly design and programming and kind of a business background. And we usually talk to activist advocacy groups. How many people here are in the room that would say at the dinner that they are activists? Great. So I avoid a lot of vocabulary that I'm used to and see how that goes. So the first part of the talk will be about this book that you can later see, which is called Visualizing Information for Advocacy. That is an outcome of about 2.5, 3 years of running workshops, discussions with different groups, small and bigger around the world. We are an international organization based in Berlin right now, registered in Netherlands, and we have an office also in Bangalore in India. And it's 32 of us, and we're a mixture of technologists, kind of design people, but heavily politically charged, I would say. So first thing I'm going to talk about is the structure of the book. Where the book is coming from is to try to explain to people, and it's getting hot now. What kind of image, and what is the role of image in advocacy? What image can do for you? Because there's a huge hype around infographics, interactive visualization, and actually it's going down now. People, when they see infographic now, they say like, oh, not another one. And especially this long toilet paper, kind of like infographics and so forth. We divided them into 3 categories. So the first category that we use and explain to people is the visual that is far from infographic yet. It's not very complicated. It uses a very simple metaphor, and this metaphor requires a moment. So you look at it, and you see what it is. And there's very little evidence there yet, but the reason of using it is to get people to think about the evidence. What do you think is this? It's going to be a little bit of quiz as well, I forgot to tell you. What is this? That's just, what do you see?
Trash.
Trash. What kind of trash? Where do you see the organic trash?
Well, I can't even tell back here, but like I call it inorganic because I see toothbrush and like plastic and stuff.
Yeah, it's mostly plastic. There's kind of an assembly of plastic that has been found by photographers working for National Geographic. And these photographers are working in the far, far islands where they were sent by National Geographic to kind of make a story about the most remote, the most beautiful, pristine places in the world where humans don't go. And they built a shed where there was an albatross bird coming in every morning, and they called the bird the shed bird. And one day the little bird came in and died in front of them. I will be talking a little bit of that as well, unfortunately, because I'm Polish, I think. So I can't stop myself. We start from birds. And the bird died, and what happened, they were surprised. So they did the section of the bird, and they find out that the albatross was filled with plastic. They are surface eaters, so they eat only what's floating on top of the water, and the parents of the bird were feeding the little one with a lot of plastic mistaken for food and so forth. At the same time, Greenpeace was struggling in telling a narrative, telling the story about the plastic patch in the Pacific Ocean that you're aware of, that is bigger than Spain or whatever, half or third of US. And they couldn't find a visual because this plastic patch is invisible. You can use satellite, you can go there, it's just invisible, it's transparent. So you can't show it to anybody. And one of the Greenpeace activists went to the exhibition in Washington, saw the pictures that were unrelated to plastic patch, but then they used the photographs for the campaign, How to Starve to Death on Full Stomach. That enabled them to use somebody else's evidence from different story to visualize a problem that is impossible to show. And so when you use metaphor, the evidence comes in as a secondary kind of value, but the primary you try to attract the viewer into the problem that is invisible. It may be also invisible because it's taboo, not because it's physically invisible, it's because you can't show it. And another example we use very often, you can find in the book, is genital mutilation in Africa. How are you going to show it? And Amnesty International did succeeded. They used these 3 roses showing sewing petals. You can read the story. But that's the basic, this is the start of how we approach the image in advocacy work. The second way, and this is something that you are probably much more exposed to, you probably have seen the film Story of Staff of story of bottled water or story of cosmetics and so forth, done here in the US by free-range studios with very well-known activists. This story is basically based on a series of diagrams, infographics, etc., which is about, and I just bring it back, getting the picture. So the first one is very simple message, short time, metaphor to get you to the problem. The second one is get the picture when you expect from the viewer that they will follow the narrative, the storyline that you're trying to convey in some linear way. There may be a few layers, but you expect that they won't take you to the bathroom and spend half an hour in the bathtub looking at it and analyzing. You just want them to get the broad idea. What is the connection between what went wrong, how it got there, and how we solve it in some context that is in blue, which is how does it look like in other countries. So this is the one of the examples produced here, I think, by Good Magazine. This is usually a way of showing, what is the problem, what is the solution, what is the context, what kind of perspective, or what are the consequences of something, and how we can project in the future. So this is the way how we can use this kind of visualization. How does it sound so far? It's okay? Okay. So the third element that we taught, like in these 3 phases or 3 types of using visual in advocacy work, is giving kind of a more power to the viewer, where you assume that people looking at your evidence and data can figure out things themselves. The 2 previous ones is kind of more of a broadcasting. You give a metaphor or you give a given storyline when you say ABC or 1, 2, 3. This is how it goes. This is what it is. This is what we found. When it comes to get the details, this is an example we did with a land coalition that is looking at land grabbing, large-scale land grabbing, big database, 2,000 records of over 100 hectares land grabs around the world, and they wanted to attract 3 different audiences. Activists on the ground who they wanted to give very direct access to the actual records so they could figure it out for themselves and use in their work. They wanted to give data to researchers and policymakers that they could see more global perspective of how it works. And another example of get to details is the project that you probably know from here, which is Exxon Secrets, that is looking at connection between a corporation that gave fellowships and money to research, and they map all the researchers and institutions involved in this grant making, and they look at what they were talking in the context of climate change, and they find out that everyone that was funded by Exxon created a category of climate skeptics, with no exception. And you could see at every single presentation, opinion raised at any conference, etc. Those were the people speaking. There's no climate change, there's no global warming. Nothing like this happens, you have evidence for that and so forth. And they create very simple visual interface that enable people to map the institutions and then people back to institutions and see how the system works. And for us is a very interesting example that I will focus on in a few seconds as well. When you look at this way, and this is more about large data that is still growing, you use the visual as the initial interface. You attract the viewer to something that you want them to explore. And that's the major difference between this one and the previous one. And obviously we know it from old times when visual is being used by in statistics and other forms of looking at the large data, where it tells you the story about what are the trends, what are the paths, what's happening over time, and then you can dive in and look at things. I'm going to talk about a little bit of this element where you use visualization in trying to understand what actually is going on in different contexts, and I will focus on a very specific one story. To summarize this, the concept of the book is based on these 3 very basic ideas, that you use image to enable the viewer to get the idea. they still, you know, they would say they're neutral, they're uninterested, they don't want to know really, but you want them to stop for a second and look at an issue from your point of view. Then get the picture is more, if they're already there, if they feel there's something there, but they're not sure, you give them a basic connections. Okay, I knew A and B, but I have no idea that it is creating C. And now you're showing that to me. Get the detail is more about enabling the viewer to explore the information. So it's kind of the connection between the more scientific approach and the less scientific approach. And what's the conclusion? I usually ask the public, but then everybody looks somewhere else. So usually there's no conclusion at this point. At this point I bring some other images and some other stories to kind of get into a conclusion. And in a way, I would like to use a quite tough and difficult politically example, especially in the context of US, and I want you to kind of focus on the visual rather than on the political aspect or emotional aspect, because it will bring both of them together. And my question is, what is this? Map. You see map? What do you say? Can't hear you. Sorry.
The one on the bottom is for explosions. Like,
No, no, okay, but basically what you see, there are two maps, right? One has a low density, one has a high density of red dots. Right? You made an assumption that is not there about explosion. And you know that those are two different maps, right? So the top map is a city that is starting from B, which is Bradford in the UK, and the bottom map is the city in Iraq, it's Baghdad, basically. So it's a tricky question. In a way, because the top map is a map done by a friend of ours. We have, as you have here, strong winters sometimes, and there's a lot of ice coming in, and people, break their arms and legs and so forth. And he ran a short campaign with his friends when they map all the bins with there is a problem, gravel or these little stones that you throw on the
Salt.
Oh, salt, yes, that's what we do back in Poland as well. And it really ruins your shoes, actually. So they map all the bins where you can find it. The bottom map is obviously, you were very close to the answer, is 1 month of operations in Iraq. And those are the civilian casualties, as mapped by The Guardian. And I'm using this example because when it comes to the visual and to evidence, when you use ubiquitous tools, when you use mapping, when you use the red dot, there's no difference. It doesn't carry any political or emotional aspects. It shows you just density that looks the same, that gives these two events a similar visual quality, if you like. And I would like to focus on this example of Iraq for a few seconds, looking at how looking at evidence and using visual changes where we're looking at it from. First time we heard visually as well that there's a high probability that the number of civilian casualties in the war in Iraq is much larger than we knew from official reports, was through this infographic done by New York Times that actually won a lot of awards in 2006. It was the first time that somebody, and they had a group of investigators who look at a lot of public reports, local and international, and they suspected that there was something different in the story that they didn't know. But nothing happened between 2006 and 2010 in terms of information, evidence, and visual up until WikiLeaks. And this is just a sample from WikiLeaks where a group of researchers got all the files, and they were trying to figure out what these reports are telling. The struggle they had with these files was that basically they were mostly army reports, but they changed the indexing system. they changed the categories, who and how died, etc. So you couldn't really figure it out. So they did this gigantic, kind of like a big sphere 3D in Italy, a map where they're trying to figure out what was happening in the war through these reports. And the same data was picked up by some artists. One of them was Camille McLuffy, whose specifically this visualization got viral at the time, and he actually didn't know why. He did very basic manipulation of the data. This is the data on the right side in a chronological order. So all the reports as they were coming day by day. And on the left side is sorted by the category of who died in the war. And obviously the blue and the kind of a turquoise color is this is the U.S. Army. This is the troops collaborating with the Army. Those are the civilians. Those are the potentially they use different categories for that, but they were called enemies overall. And, so, and this shows you the proportion between the deaths on the local side in Iraq and the civilians in orange. And he did also another map where he removed the geographical map from under the picture. Other group here in the US did this Doug McCune project, which is more artistic project about Iraqi nodes, where he did just very basic thing, 2004, 5, and 6, ordered by 3 types of casualties: Iraqi forces, civilians, and enemies. And you can see that the red is dominating over time into civilians, etc., and so forth. I didn't want to explore that kind of part of the story. The Guardian, UK-based newspaper, focused on the relationship between the deaths and the reports available, trying to find a visual interface to the database and show the WikiLeaks in a kind of more accessible way, etc. But all of this is kind of, arithmetical. It's about numbers, it's about colors, it's about categories, etc. It doesn't tell any specific story, except that the narrative that we knew from mass media is different than the narrative that we're learning from leaked reports and so forth. And then you have 2 categories of kind of more I would say emotional ways of showing that information visually that pay some respect to people involved in these deaths. On one hand, you see CNN project about Iraq and Afghanistan when it's paying tribute to all the soldiers who died in the war, which is extremely important. And whenever you go on the dot is a person. You see the story, when it happened, how it happened, etc. It is still fairly abstract. Shortly after that, New York Times picks up the same data set and they make this kind of a rectangular where every square represents the person, the soldier, and when you go over a square, it turns into a face of a person, gives a more personal background and so forth, which is more kind of it is actual tribute to those who died. Without any sarcasm or anything on my side and also of the makers. On the other hand, you have a problem with the visual and evidence and data, because when you look at the story from the perspective of the other side, of Iraq, these 2 stories, the CNN and the New York Times, do not represent the civilian casualties that were massive. You see this visual. This visual is taken from one of the cemeteries which represents people who died on the other side. And the most dramatic one, before we move on to another story, is reaction to that by artist Wafa Bilal, whose brother was killed in 2006 at the beginning. He decided to kind of try to represent this on himself in kind of a memory of his brother, when he tattooed all the casualties, 110,000 casualties, as you can see on his back, using the invisible ink, the ink that you can only see under the fluorescent light, like in a dance hall, etc. And he failed. He wasn't able to do that. I'm trying to make a link here between the abstract and the kind of easy way of talking about visual, where you can say, you can say whatever you want, and evidence and data that has a personal meaning to people and represents actual problem that involves a lot of people who would have different opinions. And I just picked this example, which is extremely dramatic, and especially in this context. And I would like to talk more about what it means to use visual, what it means to kind of talk about what kind of influence and impact you can have in telling different narrative and different story, especially in the context of our work. And our work is mostly about problems that are very difficult to talk about, not about. Can you hear me still? Or maybe better that you can't. I don't know. You never know what's better. So let's move on into kind of a different story. And I have another story later on that is equally dramatic, but from the European perspective as well, but different consequences. The question I would like to ask you is, how much water do you think is on Earth? The first answer is 70%. 70%, or? A lot, yes, yes. Okay, so that's what we think, right? And
Salt water, but
yeah, it's water. I mean, there are other issues with that because I'm going to show you something, and then there's a lot of questions you raise usually. So if you read about it, yes, it's a 70% of Earth's surface. But then when you see the image that NASA produced 2 years ago, it doesn't look like what you think it looks like, because it looks like this. This is the 70% of water, right? So the problem we have, and so for those who are very specific about what kind of water we're talking about, I had a lot of questions before, and people were asking, does it include water in our bodies and animals' bodies and so forth? I don't think so. It's just the water that is on the surface of Earth. And they measure it, and it's smaller than the moon. And I'm showing you this example because when you work with an image and you try to convince somebody about something using your evidence and data and so forth, not only the value of the data matters, but the preconception that people have in their head matters more. So if we all gone through the education looking at a picture of blue planet, knowing that we have 70% of water, we would never assume that this image is true. Unless we look at it and we know it's NASA, they probably did the proper calculations, and they had some friends who checked with Wolfram and others, and it turns out to be true. I'm just using this as an example to tell you that people have different ideas about how things look like. And you have to counter that in some ways, or be able to propose something that would be strong enough to remove the picture they have in their brain and propose another picture, if you want. This is a camera developed by a friend of mine, Sasha Pochleb, who lives in London. He's German. He was obsessed with red dots, like machines that can do only one thing and do it very well. So he produced a camera that takes pictures of a decent resolution, but doesn't have a lens. So what happens when you take a picture? If I had a camera here, I would take a picture of you, and the camera would connect Flickr, and then it would download from Flickr a picture that was taken at the same time. I was put to Flickr at the same time when I pressed the red button, and I would look at somebody else's picture at the same time. That's the camera. The other camera was developed 2 years ago in New York by a New York artist, who is a slightly different camera. It has a lens on the other side, and it has a button. It's green this time. When you take a picture, it takes a picture. It sends the picture to automatic Turk. I think you know the concept, because it's probably done through here, California. And in a few seconds, you get the description of the picture. That just prints out the description. So I took a picture here, I would get the print like zzz, it would be like a room of 27 people looking at the camera and so forth. And you may wonder why I'm showing you these two cameras. We went recently to the exhibition in Barcelona called Big Bang Data, and this amount of pictures, this is 24 hours of Flickr. This is how much is uploaded, and somebody took all this data and printed out as pictures and fill the room. Those are the pictures. They actually are all the pictures. You can dive in through them, do whatever you want, etc. It's impossible to go for a single person for a very long time. And these two cameras and and the printout of Flickr, I wanted to show you to illustrate the fact that we are saturated with images in an unusual, in history overall way. So when you produce an infographic or any kind of other visual, this is the competition that we all creating all the time. The next example I wanted to show you is, on one hand, this is what we're doing for ourselves, using mobile phones, etc. On the other hand, there's a certain demand from the media that is looking at which image would work, which wouldn't work. And I show you the example with the bird, when Greenpeace took photographs of somebody else to illustrate something that was invisible, to explain the complex issue. Media have another problem, which is they would like to show a picture that would tell the story immediately, regardless if it is true or not. This picture was viral among different, probably viral is not the word you should use, but it was very popular among mainstream media, representing the plastic patch in the Pacific Ocean. The problem with this image, and I'm going to show you a short film in a second, was that this image is taken in Manila, in the mouth of the river, has nothing to do with Pacific, forget the plastic patch, etc. But the media were insisting of using it because you can see what you can see. It just doesn't look good. And it was a good illustration to tell the story. However, it wasn't true visual. And on the other hand, because of the power of social media, power of Google, we also end up with this kind of story. So hopefully that's going to work.
If you Google drone, the first image result is a picture of what appears to be a Reaper drone firing a missile. And this image, because it's the first result on Google, this is the power that gives it, has been endlessly transmitted through the media, endlessly reproduced. And you see it everywhere, from kind of the front page of newspapers to kind of activist reports. And the origins of that image are in a 3D hobbyist forum online. Some guy a few years ago created it, modeled it in 3D, painted it in Photoshop, put it on a background of some mountains. That drone doesn't exist. And so the most widely distributed image of this kind of incredibly liminal, strange technology is itself a dream.
So this is the example. This is the example from the film that we're not showing here. It's called Unseen War, which is looking at different narratives around drone operations done by Pakistani army and US in Fatah and so forth. But this is the idea that is an image that shows something that doesn't exist. And there's a problem with that. So there's another example from Vancouver. You may have seen this picture. I don't know. This is the riots. There's a couple that look like they're kissing just in the middle on the ground between police running and beating on the rioters and so forth. It went viral as a kind of a slogan, you know, make love, no war, and so forth. And to the extent that the father of the guy on Facebook post, you know, the post, you know, this is my son, he knows how to do right things in the right time, and so forth, etc. And the story was on for a week as this kind of a narrative. The problem was that she was hit by the bullet and lost consciousness, and he's checking if she's breathing. They're not doing anything else. He thinks she's dead, basically. But the story went viral as a different one. And that kind of looked like it died out. But just shortly after that, you could see this very picture being appropriated by the kind of, you know, commerce, if you like, where it is promoting some kind of a outfit worth $69.99, and that would make you be cool. I guess like this guy or her, I don't even know. But not only that, not only they used the original picture completely misrepresenting what had happened, but the same picture inspired another company to produce completely different image, which has the same false meaning and is about buying these glasses and so forth. But I'm showing that because when you try to do advocacy work, when you try to tell the story, but also in the context of not advocacy, when you try to explain something that is fairly boring, health issues and whatever else, this is the competition you have. And this competition is not only sophisticated, but also can be funny. And I show you an example of that.
Ô, Diego,
Oi.
você fez alguma coisa no cabelo? Não. É que ele tá com um efeito de comercial de shampoo de mulher. Você.
Sério?
Deve ser o shampoo que você tá usando.
Sexy and free.
Shampoo feminino não foi feito para você. Dormente foi.
So this is the context, and then you have a lot of advocacy groups who think, okay, if we had enough budget and enough creative people, we can do something equally funny or visually appealing that would convince people that there's a real problem. But the problem with that is they can end up with something like this.